All right, everybody, welcome back to Unzapped. Appreciate you stopping by. Listen, I have done an auto replication of the Charlie Kirk shooting, meaning I took a vintage 30-06, sitting in my uncle's gun cabinet for 35 years. I took some ammo that was probably loaded probably around the same time as, before my grandfather died. And this was a just a simple shot. I wanted to replicate the proposed narrative by the FBI that this was a shot taken from 142 yards, and I wanted to capture the audio of a baseline of what that would sound like. And then I wanted to compare that audio with the audio that was captured with a similar microphone in a similar location to Charlie Kirk. So I did a whole setup of this, and I haven't done a conclusion on this because I've been very confused. Because though been a hunter my whole life, I'm an enthusiast. I have I'm a pretty smart dude. I'm not just this dumb guy that's just kind of doing this. I understand what I'm looking at. I'm definitely not an audio engineer, which is what's given me pause up until this point, because it was very complicated when you're trying to calculate crack to bang and do all this other weird stuff and trying to understand things that there's a lot of unknowns, known unknowns in this scenario. And I so I hesitated. I talked to Audio Freak Matt over there. We've gone back and forth quite a bit. We've talked. We were on a Zoom call, kind of gone through this stuff, so we can understand. Like I got gun ballistics and understand guns, and he doesn't. He understands audio. And another person who did a replication was Matt Kester. Matt Kester and I were on a Zoom call a couple hours the other night, and he's done lots of different replications, things that I wanted to do. And then he just beat me to the punch. Can you take a gun apart? Can you put it back together? Can you still shoot? Is it still zeroed? Can it be hidden in a pant leg after it's taken apart? Can you walk upstairs? All these things, all of these mechanical things that go into this narrative, were kind of dispelled a lot by Matt Kester and his replication. So shout out to Matt. I have, I like both of these guys very, very much. We hit it off when we talked. I could totally see a friendship blooming with both of them. But what each one of them was saying was very confusing to me. Audio Freak is kind of going down the road of reflections and these kind of things, trying to omit the crack to bang stuff, because it's so complicated, and there's, like I said, there's so many known unknowns. And then Matt Kester was talking about, ground reflections and the boom being in a different location and all this other stuff. And I'm racking my brain. I'm thinking, oh my God, this can't possibly be what I'm looking at in my audio of the day that I shot my 30-06 and taken audio from what I've seen from a very approximately close location to the audio where Charlie Kirk was shot from his right, his back right. And my audio signature matches completely. And I'm sitting here going, how can I prove this without being an audio engineer? How can I prove this without having the credentials that are required to do all this stuff? And so I'm like sitting here, saying, all right, I'm done. I'm just not going to deal with this. I guess I'm just going to have to take plausibility here and move on. But one thing was really bothering me, and people are still coming up with all these theories, and I kept in the back of my mind going, okay, but if what I'm thinking is right, then all those other theories, or most of them, are completely impossible. Because if there is a crack to bang, and you can determine distance with crack to bang, and the distance matches 142 yards, then that distance, that two millisecond distance that between those two spikes, could mean that you could only get about 118 yards with the slowest supersonic gun. So that would mean anything inside of 118 yards is not possible. I know that's complicated, and I apologize, because I really wanted to make this as uncomplicated and possible, as possible. And I promise you, I'm going to do that real quick. So just stick with me. I want to show you my audio replication first, so you understand where this revelation came to me and how we got to where we are here in the most simplest possible way that I can explain this. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up my screen. I'm going to show you the audio replication that I did. And again, I simply wanted audio here. I wanted to see what a 30-aught sounds like. And this is the official narrative. The alleged shooter was here. Charlie Kirk was here. I have just a quick run through this video. I have some property where I live, so I ended up saying, okay, well, let's replicate that as best as we can. So I came up with this location here. This location is kind of in my front yard, kind of shooting back into no man's land. And this is a four-wheeler with a trailer and a shooting platform, exactly 142 yards away from the target. So I'm a little, maybe 4 or 5 feet above ground here. And this is pretty much ground level, this target that I'm shooting at. To bring up another quick thing here, I'll show you just pretty quickly. This is another top view, and I set up several mics around here. So I had one right here. I had one right here that was kind of facing this direction. I had one right here kind of facing the target. I had a camera with video here facing the target. This is kind of a crowd replication. And then I've got the 70D camera and my iPhone back here. And both of these are pointing, the iPhone is pointing at the target, and the 70D camera had a telephoto lens and it was pointing directly back at me. Okay. So that's kind of what I'm going to go through real quick, just to kind of show you the lay of the land. And this video is only 2 minutes, so we probably won't go through all of it, but I just want to show you a couple interesting things that were captured here. First of all, this is a drone footage. This is going to show the trailer with the shooting platform above the ground. This is going to show my old grandpa's 30-06 model 1917. It's a very old gun, and a very old ammo here, 30-06 hand loads. And down here is the target, right at 142 yards, the exacto. And we're just going to do a quick flight down here and show you the mic positions. Here's the first mic position. All right, we're going to go down through here. We're going to show you the second mic position. Okay, that's the audio from that. This audio is actually pretty cool, because if you just saw this, if I go back just a little bit, look at the goldenrod to the left. I'll try to hide it right here. See that? The bullet hit that goldenrod. Kind of cool. This is the other interesting thing, is this is a piece of rail iron. Now, I took this gun out of a gun cabinet that's been sitting for 30 plus years. I didn't zero it. I pulled a bullet out of the case that's been around for that long. It's been stored properly and all that stuff. My uncle's a reloader, so he's good at this stuff. But that's something he did 30 plus years ago, probably at this point. And so I never zeroed it. I just shot. Again, I wasn't really looking to hit this piece of iron. That's why I put all this backstop back here, because I wanted to at least see, roughly where the bullet was hitting. Interesting though, if this was somebody's chest up and to the right, I mean, it's pretty close to where a neck would be, right? Kind of weird, ironic. But what's the most compelling thing about this whole thing, and that, it kind of came to me, was this piece right here. This is my Canon 70D with a 70 by 200 millimeter lens aiming back at me. And you can see this puff of smoke here. And this is the key thing, because the simplest calculation that a person could do is a sound calculation, right? Speed of sound. How long does it take from, you've all seen like something happen in the distance and then you don't hear it for a couple seconds? Lightning and thunder. I mean, all those things are based on the speed of sound. And you can always kind of calculate, you know, the old thing where you hear thunder and you can count until you hear the lightning, and then you can kind of get an idea what distance it is away. Well, that's the calculation that we're looking at here. So how I did this was I took that video and I brought it into Adobe Premiere. Okay. I scrolled around until I found the muzzle blast. Okay, the very one frame where the muzzle blast is. And then I cut the audio portion of that at that exact location. So now what we have is we have an indication of sound happening that's far away from us. About, in this case, 143, 144 yards, because I showed you it's behind the target slightly, and the target's at 142, okay? Now, speed of sound calculation has like a bunch of different things that go into it. Humidity, elevation, you know, all that kind of stuff. Without getting into that, you know, you can just say that there's going to be a little bit of a margin of error, but generally 0.379 is the delay. 0.379 milliseconds is the delay at 142 yards. That's an important number, because if you have an audio signature and you go to 0.379, there should be a spike, and that spike should be the muzzle blast. Pretty simple, right? So I took this audio piece and I imported it into Audition, which is an audio software. And we're looking at the spectrograph here. We're looking at the regular, these lines just show like how loud something is. And this kind of shows all the frequencies and the loudness and all that kind of stuff. And because this video started exactly at the muzzle blast, we want to look for an audio signature somewhere near 0.379, probably a little bit further than that slightly, because again, that's at 142. So 143, 144, it's going to be a little bit more delayed than that. So as I'm looking through here, I find at 0.4, the beginning of this vertical line is 0.4. Well within the margin of error. Don't know the humidity, don't know the elevation. Again, we're not at 142 yards exactly because the camera's back a little bit further. There's other factors. You know, there's frames in the video. Maybe the muzzle blast happened just before and I didn't catch it, because the frames of the video, there's only 60 of them. You know what I mean? In a second, and the audio is a stream. So there's a couple different things going on there. So there's probably a little bit of a delay, slight delay there. But anyways, 0.4, 0.379, 0.4. You're talking 0.02 of a second at that differential. So this must be the muzzle blast. Now, you might ask yourself, what is this up here? Well, this is where that whole complication comes into, right? This is a sonic crack. And there's a mic cone or a mic axis, like the mic can only hear from a certain distance. And then there's this thing on a supersonic bullet flying through the air called the sonic crack, and it creates what's called a Mach cone. And that Mach cone, wherever that Mach cone reverberates out and meets that mic axis, is where you would see this crack coming in. And crack to bang theory says that you can measure the distance between the crack and the bang, and you can determine the distance. Well, because there's so many different factors that go into where the Mach cone meets the mic axis and in what direction and all this other crap, there's too many variables. It's very complicated. I decided let's just stick with where I know the boom is. This is the muzzle blast showing up in my audio signature at 142 yards, fired from a 30-06. All right. And back here is where I saw in the video where my where my muzzle released smoke. This all lines up perfectly. So we don't really care so much about this at the moment. We more care about what this line looks like, this signature looks like, okay? And so as I'm going through here, this is where it got, this is the simple part. Simple, speed of sound, there it is. Now I get into where this gets wild, and that's here. So the contention that I've had, both with Audio Freaks and with Matt, and not really contention with either one of them, but Audio Freak feels like this is a reflection of this, and Matt Kester believes that this, actually even believed that this was a reflection of this Mac cone, like a ground reflection, right? Which didn't make sense to me, and that's why I kept digging here. But look at this. Look at this alignment. Okay? 30-06, 142 yards, known distance for the speed of sound for the muzzle blast, and it lines up nearly perfectly. Even the sonic crack lines up nearly perfectly. This video, this audio signature comes from the video to the back left of Charlie Kirk in the same position that my camera was in. Crickets, right? Does that make sense? You don't have to be an audio engineer to figure this out. If you use simple math, speed of sound calculation, there's the boom. There's the boom. We know that this is a sonic crack, and this is a sonic crack. You measure the distance now between these. If you know those two are what they are, it fits 0.2 milliseconds. It fits with the official narrative of a 30-06 at 142 yards. Full stop. This is it. What this means is that there, you can walk this back now if you accept this as fact. Now you can walk this back and say, okay, well, what does that mean? Did we have any guns in the crowd shooting at him subsonically? Nope, not possible. What's the slowest supersonic round there is, and how close could you get with it to match this signature? Right, and that's really probably like a 223, a soft round, a soft lighter load 223 at, maybe 118 yards. Anything closer to that than that is impossible based on this audio signature. Now, of course, there's a bunch of other things. Did this audio signature, was this the thing that killed Charlie Kirk? I mean, you could go a million miles away and try to understand different things and different conspiracies and all this kind of stuff. But notice that there isn't any other really signatures in here, any other loud pops anywhere. There's definitely a crack to bang. There's other anomalies here that could be, these could absolutely be mock cone reflections off of buildings. These things could be, this one possibly is a bullet flying through the air. It could be feedback from the mic and the PA system in here. There could be all kinds of little things that could be causing some of these anomalies. There's crowd noise, but I can't unsee this being a bang, this being a bang, this being a crack, this being a crack. I just can't unsee it. And again, this is a speed of sound calculation here. This isn't some complicated, doctorate style level math or audio, expert level analysis. This is simple, about as simple as it can get. So that's pretty much what I wanted to show in this video. This is my conclusion. My conclusion is that the official narrative holds true, at least as it relates to this audio signature. And all the other mechanical things about Tyler Robinson getting on the roof, taking his gun apart, dispel the myth. There's 2 bolts that take apart this gun. Two screws, really. And it comes apart pretty easily. Matt Kester did a video. He zeroed his rifle. He took it all apart, put it all back together, and shot. The scope is mounted to the barrel, and the barrel and the scope are married. You're zeroing the barrel. It has nothing to do with the stock. You remove the barrel and the scope from the stock, put the barrel and the scope back on the stock. You haven't changed the position of the scope. And so that is plausible. Him walking around with it in his pant leg, plausible. We see video for sure of him walking and limping back towards the campus. We don't see any video of him going up and down the stairs. We don't see any video of him walking anywhere else. We see the limp in the one video, and that's it. The rest are stills, and they're not, they're not telling the whole picture here. And, the FBI's got lots of video. They've got way more video than we've seen. I'm sure of it. And the reality is they don't have to publish it, because they've published enough to get a prosecution, to justify the prosecution of this supposed shooter, Tyler Robinson, right? So they don't need to release anymore. The rest of it's going to get proven out in court. They're going to show all the rest of the evidence in court, and that's the deal. So there's still one thing left here that I think most people that are saying that they can't dispel the official narrative are saying, and that is that the 30-06 did not exit Charlie Kirk. Well, that's a problem. That's a problem, but the thing we only really need to prove is plausibility here. Is it plausible? There's on the ground people that have gone to UVU, and everybody has said the same thing, that it's much smaller than they feel like. The angle from where the shooter was seems like it's higher than what it seems like on Google Earth. So there's potentially a steeper angle than the 10 degrees that's been calculated. And, there's been shot replications into pig carcasses and shot replications into pork butts and shit like that. And, the reality is, none of those match the analog. And the analog is a human being who was shot in the neck. And some of the latest high definition video that's been published, you can clearly see a major shockwave event, a major cavitation event, meaning the bullet entered and with such force that it just made this huge air bubble, basically. In that cavitation is the displacement of liquid and water and all that stuff. And that's going to slow down a bullet significantly. And if that bullet, bounced off of a bone, deflected off of a bone, maybe it hit his necklace and deflected, I don't know. But the plausibility is there, and the replications that are out there are not analog replications. The pig carcass shots that you all saw, that was an open cavity pig. It was not. If it was a freshly killed pig that had all of its blood and all of its internals and organs and had a sealed body, maybe you would have seen the cavitation, and maybe that cavitation would have slowed the bullet down before it hit the backbone or something. I mean, it's plausible. I'm not saying it happened, but it's plausible, and that's all I was looking for here. My whole goal here was to see if there was anything about the official narrative that was not plausible. And I think we've come to that conclusion, that it's all plausible. The official narrative is plausible. Possible and plausible means almost there. What I don't see with any of the other theories that are out there are any evidence whatsoever not in the audio signature, not in the video, not in the, there's Paramount Tacticals doing a 3D model, and they're talking about a couple different shooting locations that are simply not possible because the buildings are in the way and the angles are wrong. And so that's where I'm at. Like, I don't think, based on what I'm seeing, that there's anything other than the official narrative. And I don't want to say, I don't even want to agree with it necessarily, because there's still a lot of anecdotal stuff that I don't understand about it, right? And we may never understand these things. We may never understand why the hell he sent all those text messages that completely fit the narrative, like 100,000%. And I'm not saying that they weren't potentially faked, because maybe they were. Maybe that's not even Tyler Robinson on the camera. Maybe that's Lance Twiggs. I mean, there's some theories going around about that. I mean, it's just a blurry photo. We don't really have anything super clear that's been released, which is surprising, but not really, since there's been no leaks, and the FBI just kind of handed off to prosecution, and there it is, and they've laid it out. Other anecdotals that don't make a lot of sense is the motive. Like, I get it. There was people, there's a lawyer that's like, how can you expect us to believe that he just on a whim decided to grab his gun and walk down to go to the UVU 4 hours away, walk the campus one time, and then find a shooting position, walk up the stairs. There's a lot of those answers that we may never get. There's a lot of things that are coming out of people's mouths that are literally just guesses. Literally just guesses. There's no evidence to back them up. There just isn't. So anyway, that's the end of my video. I'm real interested to see how this lands with people. So I'm just a dude, man. I'm just sitting here, and I just couldn't let this continue to itch me without scratching it. And there it is. I've scratched it. I've laid it out as simply as possible. I'm not claiming to be an audio engineer. I'm claiming to do some simple math based on a simple experiment that I did in my backyard, and it matches. So let me know what you think. Thanks for watching, and I appreciate you all. Have a good one. Peace out.